Hi, welcome. Thank you for joining me today. We're a little late in getting started, but here we are. So, today we're going to talk about baggage. We're going to talk about baggage and unresolved issues and how these issues are holding us back from being productive and thriving in our lives. So, this could be personally, but it could also be professionally. So I want you to think about it as, maybe your relationship is not going the way you want to. Could be personally, could be at work, your marriage, you have coworkers, but also as a CEO, what is it there that I could be doing and how am I holding myself back as the leader? And is there any baggage, unresolved issues that I have? And oftentimes this actually shows up. So I encourage you to be really open. And I'm excited that you're here. So thank you for making the time to be present today. And I encourage you, if you're here or if you're watching the replay, that you stay all the way through until the end because it's going to be worthwhile. There's going to be a lot of tips and good information that I will be sharing with you. And give yourself the time. You deserve it. So, why are you here? Maybe you're curious about the topic and you wonder, what is this all about? This baggage. Do I have baggage? Do I have stuff that I need to address? Is my relationship with my mother, my father, or my spouse, does it have unresolved issues? I remember a long time ago when I started my first corporate job, immediately there were things that happened. And I wasn't aware of it then, but it carried through until the very end. And because they never got resolved, it always impacted the relationship that I had with my superior, my boss. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. So you're here maybe because you're curious, but maybe you are here because some of my clients tell me this because you're doing all the right things. You're making the calls, you're doing all the right marketing. If you're an entrepreneur, you have that strategic plan, it's clear. Maybe you're leading a department and things are going so so, and you're wondering why are they going so so? So that's maybe one of the reasons that you're here. But maybe you're here because it's not going so well, and you're wondering why is it not going so well? I don't know. I don't know what to do. I'm confused. I don't know what's next for me. I don't have any ideas. I'm not creative. And I need inspiration, but I can't seem to be inspired or inspired myself. So maybe that's one of the reasons that you're here. Or maybe the results are always up and down. Like you can't keep up with the pace. It's like it's really, really, really good. And then it's like it goes down because you're not able to keep doing what you know you need to do in order to produce the result. It's not sustainable, and not because it's not sustainable, but because it's too much, because you just can't seem to find the energy or the time and you self sabotage yourself. Maybe you're confused. Maybe you're in a fog and you just don't know what's sort of wrong. I don't like to use that term wrong, but sometimes it actually makes sense. So it's like, what's wrong? I don't know. Where should I go help? Maybe that's why you're here. Or you get triggered all the time. These are the people that get so mad when they drive, or, maybe there's one person at work that just makes you crazy. And as soon as you get an email from that person, you just like, have a strong reaction. So you get triggered. And the trigger, the emotional trigger, and it could be an outburst, or it could be something that, makes you withdraw, is really stopping you, and you're not as creative, and you're not going out, and you're not making the call, and fear's holding you back. So you really, know and you're aware of that something's going on. Or you're anxious and you're withdrawing, or you're depressed. And so all this sort of negative emotions that we definitely don't like to talk about and admit. And I know that's none of you here because you're all functioning. But actually, there are a lot of functioning people who do experience a good bit of anxiety and depression and social anxiety, and they prefer to not ask for help. Uh, and it's a problem when we're in a corporate environment. And these days, once again, we have to do more with less, and the headcount is shrinking. So when we're not delegating well, when we're not communicating well, when we just want to put our head in the sand, is a problem. So these are all signs that there might be some unfinished business, and that's what we're going to look at today. So let me introduce myself. My name is Dr. Barbara Schwark. I have been coaching for 25 years, and I coach all over the globe, all the way from San Diego right now to India. And I coach executives, C-level, Fortune 50 companies, and entrepreneurs, professionals, and people that are looking to improve their career or find their career. But I also work with some private individuals and to work on things that are more on the personal level. I was born and raised in Germany, and then I lived in the United States for 27 years, and now I've been living in Israel for 9 years. I'm dual certified. I have a master's in psychology, master in public international affairs, doctoral in spiritual science, and I consider myself super experienced. I've been working with thousands of people really for lots of hours. And my specialty is to dig into this, because after 25 years, I find that is still where it's at. Now, when we allow ourselves and we have the courage to go deeper and look at what's the unfinished, unresolved stuff, and we resolve it. And that doesn't mean you have to go to therapy for a million years. We resolve it, and we resolve it on a biochemical level, and we change the narrative, the way that we talk to ourselves and what we tell ourselves about ourselves. Then big things can happen. I'm certainly an example of that. And a lot of my clients, I have some fantastic stories to tell. Then is really when we can thrive, and we can thrive in a natural way, because our soul, who we are, how we are made as human beings, we want to contribute, we want to make a difference, and we want to grow and learn new things and inspire ourselves and inspire other people, whether that's in the small or it's in the big. It doesn't really matter, but that's really who we are, and that's our natural inclination and our natural way of being. So that's what we're going to talk about. So stay tuned, and please watch until the very end. And if you want to put something in the comments, if you have a question, I'm happy to answer it. It's being streamed to 3 different platforms, so I don't always get to all of them. But if you have a question, please feel free, and I will answer it later when we're finished with the LinkedIn Live. So let's look at understanding baggage and trauma. What is baggage and what is trauma? So basically, when we're talking about this, we're looking at any unresolved emotional stuff that happened due to a past event. So it could be a recent event, or it could be something that happened a long time ago. And trauma is anything that happened, for sure, includes neglect and abuse, or any kind of abuse. Could be loss, could be, right now we're living in a war situation, so it's definitely traumatic. And I was not able to comprehend it and to resolve it for myself. That means it resulted in trauma. So trauma is on a continuum, and let's say, something that happened to you was traumatic, doesn't necessarily mean it's traumatic for me. Often has to do with where I was at the time and how I was feeling. So if I was ill, I was having a cold, and something happened to me, it's less likely that I was unable to resolve it for myself. It was overwhelming to me than when I was strong, and let's say I was in love and things were going very well for me. Then it was probably less traumatic, and sometimes even not traumatic at all. So trauma is something that we don't like to talk about, because we always associate it with these big things, like I didn't have any trauma in my childhood. I wasn't sexually abused, or I wasn't, nobody died. But that's not really what trauma is about. Trauma can be something that involved your family moving, or for some people, it is when, the second child was born and you're the oldest, and all of a sudden nobody's paying attention to you, or daddy's working all the time and mommy is going back to work because you're now in kindergarten. All these events could be potentially traumatic because they were overwhelming at the time and you couldn't or you didn't have the capacity to resolve them for yourself. So then what happens? They get stored in the body on all kinds of levels, mentally, emotionally, physically, definitely biochemically. And we make up stories because of it, because we somehow have to survive. And oftentimes what happens is that our traits, our patterns are being developed because we needed some sort of way to overcome it. So I did actually experience a fair amount of neglect in my childhood, and I also experienced sexual abuse. And one of the ways I survived it is by telling myself that I was strong, that I could handle it, that I was tough enough. So later in life, then when we have these traits, we have these patterns that we've developed. They don't serve us anymore. So as an entrepreneur, if it was hard for me to ask for assistance, it's really not a good idea because I can only thrive if I can ask for help or if I can be strong enough and be confident for people to want to hire me. So I had to work a good bit on that, and actually many other things. And I'll talk about it later. The tools and techniques that I used to resolve a lot of my trauma and let go of a lot of my unresolved, unfinished baggage. So, how does that kind of stuff manifest in your life? And I want to spend a little bit of time on that because I think it's important. I talked a little bit about it in the beginning. So, for sure, people are experiencing anxiety, depression, withdrawal. Some people don't want to leave the house. COVID definitely did a number on us, and that it really contributed to all the different ways for us to get triggered. Not asking for help. I just mentioned that as well. And there's a lot already been written about, but this whole notion of imposter syndrome is definitely one of the ways that we show emotional baggage and trauma impacting people. And when we look at imposter syndrome, and I did a whole webinar on that, you can go to my YouTube channel, Barbara Schwark, and you will find it. There's different components of that. So we have the perfectionism, we have the I can't ask for help, I have to do it alone. We have the I have to work all the time because I'm going to be found out if I do it perfectly. So there's a bunch of aspects. I don't want to go into all of them. And the way it shows up more latently, or subtly, I should say, is that people avoid taking responsibility. They don't acknowledge that maybe something went wrong. They're unable to listen. So you will have conversation with them and you will say, well, I said that to you already. And they will say, no, we never had this conversation. Or they will say, no, I didn't do it. Or there will be issues in the communication. And at work, it's really a problem because if you're working in the team and people are not acknowledging, deadlines, or that they can't do something, or that you had a certain conversation, it's challenging because how are you going to move the project forward? But even in your relationships, people are sometimes more committed to you. But if that shows up a long time in your marriage or in your friendships, it's going to deteriorate that relationship. And last but not least, and this is a big one that's showing up a lot lately because people are not feeling psychologically safe. This is this new term that we're using in HR. But I actually think this not feeling psychologically safe has to do with unfinished baggage, because I look at my boss and my boss is reminding me of my little brother, and I have unfinished stuff with my little brother, and boom, I'm getting triggered. I don't feel safe, and I'm not going to ask for help. I'm not going to tell him that something went wrong. And the same is true for a female colleague. Could be that I have issues with my mom, and my mom was, I remember that a long time ago, I was working with somebody who had a tremendous issue with their boss. And it turned out that there was a trigger in that the boss reminded this person of their alcoholic parent. And there was always this, I have to cover up for myself. I can't really show myself really because they're going to judge me. And it caused a lot of problems. And eventually, when that client of mine was able to resolve and confront it and say, hey, listen, I don't want to be treated this way, and could stand up for themselves, the relationship changed. And the business unit really was thriving because, of course, the relationship changed. So, but what I was saying is, like, people don't like to take risks because they're afraid. It goes back to, they don't want to take responsibility. They want to acknowledge things, and they play small. And these days, as you're having to do more with less, the head count is less and less, so we can't add people in the responsibilities. We have to grow by, I don't know, 10, 20, 30%. It's even more important that people are taking risks and they allow themselves to be innovative, but they can't. So bottom line, this notion of our fight, flight, or freeze, meaning I'm either running away, I'm playing dead, or I'm fighting somebody, I'm arguing with somebody, is constantly active. And can you imagine how tiring that is if that's constantly active? So that is how this shows up in our lives. And you can take a moment and just to sort of reflect of, like, what does it show up for me? What shows up in my day to day? Am I argumentative? Do I withdraw? Do I feel anxious? Am I depressed? Am I not creative? I don't like to step outside my comfort zone. So where does that show up for you? Okay, so moving right along. So what can we do about it? And there's a lot of stuff that we can do about it. But first of all, let me say, the first thing that you need to do is you actually need to say, I want to do something about it. Because if you're just moving along and you're saying, hey, it's fine, I can't do anything about it, then there's really nothing for you to do. So this year, 2024, I decided to take a look at different areas in my life where I've been dogmatic and stubborn. And I said, let's take a look, because maybe my narrative about being a bad sleeper can be changed. And maybe that's habitual. And maybe that's where I have some unresolved baggage, and I do. And maybe there's some trauma that I don't know about that I can resolve. So all those different areas. I had an injury 5 years ago, 6 years ago. I ripped my meniscus, and I haven't really been running since. So all that I'm taking on, I'm looking at what can I do about it, and I'm opening myself up to doing things differently, but also trusting that the universe will bring me the right people that can actually make a difference. And I know some of you have done a lot of things, and yet I've done a lot of things myself. When we're opening up one more time and we're saying, actually, we want to do something about it, and I will find, that is the narrative that you need in order to start. You don't need to have the answers, but you need to be willing and open to take a look and wanting to change something. So what can we do about it? First thing, after I said that, and I'm okay with it, and I want to do something about it, I can take a look at my reoccurring thoughts. So that means you start to pay attention to yourself. I have this running joke with my executives. There's a lot of executives that speak in the you. When you feel this, and when you manage people, and when you're going to do the XYZ, and they don't make I sentences. So it's one of the things I bring to their awareness, and I suggest that they make I statements. And just like that, the awareness shifts, because when you are paying attention, or when I pay attention to what I'm saying, and I'm being clear about the statements, and I'm observing myself, I can start to take a look at, what are my thought patterns? What am I thinking? Do I believe that I can be wealthy? Do I believe that I can be successful? Do I believe that I can be healthy, that I can be a good sleeper? And affirmations are actually very powerful. And if any of the things that I'm telling you right now are making you cringe or uncomfortable, that really means that there's work for you to do. So watch yourself and listen to yourself, and listen to the silence, the thoughts that you have about yourself. Am I a good friend? Am I a good mother? Am I a good spouse? I believe I can, get fit. I believe I can run 10K in under a minute. I believe I can run faster than I ever have been able before. I believe I can attract the beautiful house that I'm looking for. I believe that just the right clients can find me. I believe that I can speak at a global financial conference. So all those kind of things. If I watch my narrative and anything inside of me says, "Oh, I don't know," then again, that's something for me to pay attention. So that's one observation. Start to look at your narrative. You can even take a piece of paper and a pencil and just write things down. So really, things like ask yourself, "Am I good enough? Can I do this?" And when you hear things like, "I can," "It's too hard," "It's too difficult," "I will fail," "I've tried this before and nothing good came from it," or "Yeah, but it's not really worth it." That's all negative narrative. And that is not necessarily you, or not necessarily has to be your reality, even though that is your reality right now. Next, recognize your current emotions, specifically in situations. So, you know, let's say you are with your mother-in-law, with your father-in-law, with family members, and they just make you crazy, or you would just get anxious right away, or they're moving a plate, or the way they do their dishes, or the way they breathe, or it just gets you all wound up, or just a little uncomfortable. So start watching that. Are there people that you're uncomfortable around? And not necessarily for obvious reasons. So make a list. Even as you're sitting there right now, are there people, as you think about them, they come to mind, and you're like, I'm not comfortable with coworker. I'm not comfortable with this, my boss, or I'm not comfortable with my brother. Like, what is it? Or watching people on television, I'm looking at our leaders, and I have emotional reaction. And I will tell you why that is in a minute. But it's important that you notice that certain people, maybe you have an issue with people that are bold, or maybe people that are, heavier, or people that have a certain color. Like, what triggers you about them? Certain situations, like some people have road rage. They just get all bent out of shape. Germans are known to get really bent out of shape when somebody's in the bike lane. It's like, I think, part of our DNA. And here in Israel, we don't have a lot of bike lanes, but I get all bent out of shape. Like, why is that? Why can't I let people just, why can't they just relax? So today I was riding my bike, and sure enough, there was somebody in the bike lane. And I said, very friendly, said, "Could you please move? This is the bike lane." Yes, road rage. Other situations, you're in a store and something winds you up, or you're in a meeting. I used to have a monthly meeting, and I don't know, it just took me a while to figure out that it would trigger me just to sit there. I was always not calm at the end of the meeting. So notice that. What else? Fears. Are there certain situations that bring up fear? I was at the dentist earlier today, and it's a frightening thing for me, even though I know they take good care of me. And it is. I know why it is. I had a very bad experience when I was a child, and very traumatic. And obviously, some of that is still inside of me. So I made a note today. By the way, this is really important. When you have a positive experience with something that was previously difficult, that you really take a note and take it in and say, "Barbara, that was good. It didn't hurt at all. I had a feeling that fell out. She fixed it. It was a positive experience." And remember that. Just root it into your consciousness. So other situations are like the boss gives you feedback. I used to do a lot of 360 debriefs, and people were like already bent out of shape before I even opened my mouth, because they were conditioned to have a negative experience with feedback. Because negative feedback it's not pleasant, but doesn't necessarily mean we have to get triggered. Money. A lot of my clients have a negative response to money. They want it, but when I put the money in their hand, they have a negative response. So those are just some of the examples of what triggers you. So what can you do about it? There's a lot of things that you can do about it, and I'm going to mention a few, and then I'm going to tell you what I do with my clients, because I think It's the cat's meow. It's the best thing that's around. And I've been doing it for 20 some years now, almost all of my coaching career. And it's really brought incredible results. But, and for starters, one of the things that you can do is you can start by talking to yourself in a different way. So just like I said, watch yourself and watch how you talk to yourself, change it. And when you change the way that you talk to yourself, make sure that you don't have double negatives. So you don't want to say things like, I'm not going to be afraid, or I'm not going to worry about that, because it's that double negative, and our subconscious doesn't really understand double negatives, just holds on to the worry or to the fear or to whatever the last word was. So you want to start to talk to yourself in a very positive way. I can do this. It's fine. I'm going to be okay. And make it so that it's a little bit believable. So if you're a very negative kind of way talker with yourself, just make it a little bit more positive, and so that you're not going from, oh my God, I'm the biggest loser in the universe, to that, I'm going to be a great trizillionaire and I'm going to make a lot of money. So, make it realistic, and so that you can slowly get yourself to the next level. Now, I'm going to tell you, initially it's going to be a little weird because you're flexing a new muscle. So like you're doing something that you haven't done before, and you're going to just stick with it. And I say, stick with it for at least a month, because the way our neuropeptides work, when we want to create new neuroplasticity, we really need to work it, because it's not immediately, not instantaneously. And if you've been doing this for, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years in a negative way, it's going to take some time for you to change it. You can do mindfulness. Mindfulness is this fancy word that means we are in the present. So when we're in the present, there's more information that's available to us. We can take a look at what's going on with us. And I will tell you in a minute that we can't control our feelings, but when I'm present, I can manage them better, and I can decide and direct what I want to do with them. We can journal. Journaling gives us a lot of information about what's going on with us. And you can take just a piece of paper and a pen. I would recommend to do it that way and not on the computer, and so that you can really get into yourself. Sometimes when we write with our non-dominant hand, we get a lot of information and we get in touch with our emotions faster. So you can journal. You can do gratitude. There's lots of studies on gratitude. There's a simple exercise that you can do if gratitude is hard for you, where you just put your hand on your heart, one on your belly, and you just say words like appreciation, love, kindness, and you let that be. And you really let that be with yourself. So, or you can be grateful for different things. If you're really into gratitude, a tip is to be grateful for different things in your life, different categories: yourself, your work, your family, your surroundings, and so that you cover all the different things, all the different aspects of your life. And there's self-compassion. And I want to talk for a moment about it, because there's this great coaching tool that I learned at the Coaching Training Institute, and that's championing and acknowledgement. And this is also a muscle that we want to flex. So acknowledgement is about the past, and championing is about the future. And when we acknowledge, we do this with others, and in this case, you do it with yourself or both, is you look at something that you did that you deemed as, this was good, or this was excellent. And you look at the skills, the doing, and the being, the ways of being that stood out in you getting this done. So this could be, I went to the dentist today, so I acknowledged myself for going to the dentist, and I was courageous, and I was committed, and I was able to manage my emotions. Those are the things that I used in order to show up at the dentist. So, and then I acknowledged myself, because only I know how hard that was. You can say good job, but I really know what it took for me to do it. And championing would be to do the same thing about a future event. So it's like when I had to go to the dentist early, I was championing myself and say, Barbara, you're courageous. You know how to manage yourself. You know how to say stop, and you can do this. So that is a simple way for us to be compassionate and kind with ourselves and to acknowledge ourselves. And we can do that with our emotions. So I can acknowledge my emotions as well, not as right or wrong, but just as, yes, I was feeling afraid, and that is a-okay. So these are some of the things that you can do yourself, and they, again, require that you're committed to them, but they work, and it's not airy fairy. So, if you think this is all not rooted in business acumen, it is, because in the end of the day, what keeps us all together is that we're people. We're people with a heart, with a mind, with a body, and the CEO of a company is made up the same way as the lowest person on the totem pole. So what else can you do? Of course, you can hire somebody. So, sometimes therapy is good and coaching is very helpful. Now, if you are seeking a professional to assist you, I highly recommend that you go for somebody that has some understanding about the subconscious and unconscious and works with neuroscience or neuroscience, scientific principles or somatic principles, because what we understand about the brain and how the brain works is that it's not good enough just to have a intellectual conversation, because we need to go deeper, especially if we want to address the unfinished baggage and the unresolved potential trauma. So let me give you an overview of the brain. I want to share with you a part of a PowerPoint presentation that I do. So give me a second to get to the right slide here. Here we go. And just to give you a brief overview of the brain. So the brain does everything about us. The brain is in charge of everything. So we're talking about muscle movement. We're talking about why I had put the shirt on, why I'm doing this talk, why you fell in love, why you're working at this particular company, why you're exercising, why you are unable to move yourself forward in certain areas. Everything is connected to the brain. Now, the brain has three parts, and I'm going to review the parts quickly, and then you will see how this makes sense. Now, we have the first part. So we have the rational part, we have the survival part, and we have the limbic part. And the rational part of our brain makes for about 10% of our brain. And that part of our brain, you can see I have Einstein here, is the part that generates language. It's all about the analytics. It looks at the problem and says, yeah, we need to do this and this and this and this. And we think that is the dominant part of our brain because we're so, we're so intellectual and we're so geared towards being stimulated by our brain that we think that's, the biggest part of our brain. But it's actually not. It's only 10%. But really, we need that part because when we're setting goals or when we're doing things, we always have these pictures, and the pictures have language that's associated with it. So that part is super important. So think about it. Neocortex is analytics, it's language, it's pictures, everything that has to do with that domain. Now, would you be surprised if I told you that this part of the brain is the only part of the brain that's actually conscious, meaning that we can control it? What comes into our mind, what goes out of our mind is the part that we can decide. So if you have a thought coming into your head, you can say, stop, I don't want that thought. If you have words coming out of your mouth, you can actually change it in the middle of the sentence. Now, I know how hard it is because most of us, we have a really hard time to change our thoughts. We can't turn off our mind, and we can't always control what comes out of our mouth. So that's the neocortex. The limbic system is the emotional part of the brain. It's the part of the brain where all the emotions are being generated. And it's a biochemical chain reaction. It's like bang. And I told you earlier that we create these survival mechanisms. And it's often because at a certain point, something happened and that limbic system decided, okay, this is the emotions and this is the strategy that I need in order to deal with that. And because we work with repetition, and once a pattern is set in stone, we will repeat it over and over and over again until we have resolved it biochemically. So a lot of the times these things are going on in the background and we don't even know what is really going on. So the limbic system also regulates our temperature. It is right below the consciousness, meaning we can't control it. It's automatic, but yet it's a little bit like a beach ball. When you put the pressure on it and you push it down, it's down. But as soon as you let it go, it's up. So for those of you who are into suppressing things, and I think that's all of us, these are usually we're watching Netflix, or we're smoking, we're drinking, we're sexing, we're shopping, we are avoiding, we are procrastinating, we're sleeping. This is what we're doing in order to keep that sort of part down. And then we have the reptilian, which is the fight, flight, or freeze. It's very much like in nature, where the animals play dead, they fight, or they run away. And that part is our survival part, and that's always active. We're always into a state of survival. We're at a cocktail party, and we have a cocktail or a drink because it makes us feel safe. We want to go to a party with somebody because it's easier. Most of us, not everybody. We have our kids have a binky because it's like it makes them feel safe. So it's 2024. I've been doing this lecture for 20 years, and the fight, flight, or freeze, the reptilian brain is dominant. It still rules, because if everything was logical in the world, we wouldn't have a war. We wouldn't be arguing. We wouldn't, people would be able to live side by side in peace. So, and we wouldn't have hunger in the United States, one of the wealthiest country in the world. We wouldn't have all these things going on, because we would be able to sustain and to support one another and harmoniously exist. So here's another way of looking at it. It's the iceberg, and you have the conscious level. It's that, 10, 12%, and then we have the rest. Now, in the reptilian level, we really have the things that we don't want to know. So this is where our unconscious beliefs are, all that negative stuff about I'm not good enough, I will never be good enough, nobody loves me. And if you are able to not really have that run your life, then that just means that you're using an incredible amount of energy to constantly go against it, because it's there. You can't just pretend it's not there. A couple more things about the brain. Pavlov, very famous guy, just did these tests, and he was able to condition a dog by ringing a bell, and the dog would salivate. What they don't tell you is that eventually that conditioned response went away, but only in the healthy dogs, meaning in the unhealthy dogs, the conditioned response stayed. So the dogs that were traumatized, they were unable to do it. They kept salivating. Now, the dogs that were healthy, they were able to stop. So the question always is, how healthy are we? So it goes back to, we have unresolved stuff, we have baggage, we have trauma with our parents. It's difficult for us to automatically or naturally change that conditioned behavior. One more thing about the brain, Candace Pert, she was a famous, or she is a famous PhD, and she was the one that was able to show that this emotionality, this emotional process that's happening in our body is everywhere. So they previously thought it was only, in the top of our head, but it's everywhere. So you can have an emotional response in your finger. So all very important parts of the brain. Now, what does that have to do with you? That's a very good question. So I want you to think about it for a moment. I want you to think about how does this analysis of the brain make it clearer for you that your unresolved issues or trauma are impacting your present. So you can see that the way that we're constructed, 90% of us is ruling us, our behavior, controlling us. If that's really so, then all the stuff that I'm pushing down is certainly impacting me. Now, how can I deal with that? And I'm going to talk a little bit about, in the last sort of 10, 15 minutes of the presentation, about what I do. So I've created neuroemotional coaching, and neuroemotional coaching came because a lot of my clients came to me and they're like, Barbara, I want to change my behavior. I remember working with an executive who had 500 people under him, and he was kind of like a military man, and he didn't know how to not bark at his people. He would get all bent out of shape and triggered if something was going wrong on the floor and would go down there and, sort of rip him back into shape. And of course, that wouldn't fly with HR. And even though he was incredibly productive, he had to look at what was going on inside of him that he couldn't just turn that off. And we all have these parts of ourselves that we just can't turn off. And in his case, there was some unfinished business and some unresolved issues that we had to talk about, including some trauma that once that resolved, he was able to communicate with his staff, with his people in a completely different way. So I created neuroemotional coaching, and NEC is a coaching method that integrates the principle of neuroscience, emotional intelligence with different coaching methodologies. And the whole reason is to facilitate personal growth, emotional resilience, and to let go of the baggage and to facilitate behavioral change. Because at the end of the day, if you want to have something different, if you want to be faster, smarter, make more money, you need to actually stop doing something that you're doing and start doing that you have not been doing until now. So it focuses on the understanding of the intricate connection between the brain, emotions, and the behavior to help and navigate change, whether that's personally or professional. And it helps the people and my clients to overcome challenges and expose blind spot that they haven't been able to do otherwise. How do we do it? I use a tool called muscle testing. It's a diagnostic tool. It's very much like a biofeedback, and it helps us to get into the unconscious and subconscious patterns and beliefs where the behaviors are stored. So basically, imagine that if you have a negative belief about something, the muscle testing will show us that it's actually how weak it is. So like a barometer. And then I do a 15 sort of step propriety method. And within, 10 or 15 minutes, we go from that statement of being weak and a not fully supported inside of the, my executive clients or my clients to being a strong statement. So it's often like miracles and magic, because what happens is that the person, the client, is able then to connect the dots between, I have to yell at my staff and something that's not going wrong to, I understand now where this is coming from. And the moment that we understand where this is coming from, and oftentimes we need to go beyond language, because we can't use language in our rational mind because this is not coming from the rational mind. Oftentimes the moment that we can see and we allow ourselves to go look deep down, and it's, very fast, simple, easy process without you having to relive your trauma or having to really just like regurgitate all this unfinished business. The body goes, aha, I get it, eureka, okay, I can let it go. And then the neuropeptides, which are the peptides that create our emotions, can fire in a different way. So think about it as, here's the satellite dish, and here comes the neuropeptide and attaches, and it signals, and a certain emotion is experienced. And because it's an automatic pattern, it happens all the time. So after we do the neuroemotional coaching process, that gets disrupted, and we now have some free space available, and my clients can then put into that new space a new narrative of I can, I will, I want, I'm good enough, I'm smart, I'm creative, I can, people can talk to me in a different way, I can manage, I can lead in a different way, I can take my company to new heights. So that's basically the process. It's very fast, and it's part of the coaching process, in that we look at where do we need to go, but we use that in order to change the narrative. And so then people have a much, 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 much greater ability to change their behavior in a faster way, because it's a fast world. We want to make money. We want to move forward. And so people don't want to be coaching for like years on end or be in therapy. So that's neuroemotional coaching. Couple of stories. I told you already one story about the person, or a couple of stories that I work with. But I did a study with financial planners, and it was all about sales. And what we found is that we had people that were great performers, medium performers, and not so great performers, that when the fear of selling and rejection was removed from the equation, because everybody got rejected to some degree at some point, when that was neutralized and people were no longer afraid to be rejected, everybody went up. Even the great performers went up, and sales went up by about 60%. And that was after, I think we did about 10 sessions of this. So just know that the emotions always the key to everything. And then we have positive emotions, and we can identify those blind spots and neutralize them. It's really a winning formula. What else can I tell you? So I've been working, I do this every day, but recently what showed up was that one of my clients felt like they were not able to take themselves to the next level, and it had to do with that their business, the business of their father, collapsed when they were 10 years old, and they had sort of forgotten about it. And because of that, they had made all kinds of assumptions about what does it mean to have a business and to manage a business. Other things were recently some person, one client of mine, looked at or discovered that what happened when they were 8 years old, child number 5 was born, and they had to take care of everybody. And they were never seen, they were never heard, and there wasn't any room. And so it was very difficult for them to now go out and sell themselves, because, who would listen to them? Because their default was, nobody's interested in what I have to say. I always need to take care of everything. So, and all these things were not really something that they were aware of. But when we made that connection, it was like very powerful. And it was like, oh my God, I can see that. So these are some of the stories and some of the things that people became aware of. And the result is, people doubled and tripled their income. People were able to go out and change their lives personally, professionally, become the CEO, take their company to new heights. There's incredible stories. I had somebody that worked for a Global 50 company that wasn't able to present to the board because they would get red. And even though they had done public speaking and all sort of tools and tricks that you can pull as a public speaker, it was just something physiological that was going on with them. And after we did this work and we connected the dots, person was able to get promoted several times and be able to present to this global board with no problem. So it's magical, and it's the way that I turned my life around. I've done this work. I started this work about 30 years ago and had somebody work with me for a few years. And then I decided to take it out of the psychology realm and bring it into the coaching world, because I felt like that something like this was really needed in the business and the executive and even in the life coaching world. So, I am still super excited every day when I get to do it. And the results are ever so amazing. And sometimes I have to really pinch myself that it's real, but it's real. I had the pleasure of working with thousands of people until now. And I'm going to give you a challenge. So, first of all, if you're interested in finding more about neuroemotional coaching, certainly go to my website, clearintentions.net. There's a YouTube channel that I have where I have probably 50, 60 videos about different things, topics. I would recommend sign up for my newsletter. I do about 1 to 2 LinkedIn Live every month. And I have a special invitation for you. So if you want to get a free guide with some of these tips and learning how to master your emotions, you can find that on my homepage, cleanintentions.net. Just uh, put your email in it, and then you will get the PDF right into your inbox. And for a thank you, and because I so want everybody to be in a happy space and be successful, because I really think that that is the ticket to us all getting along, when we're fulfilled, when we're making good money, and when we're feeling in love and grateful. I'm offering everybody who watched this a 15% discount on my 3 months executive coaching program. So if you're interested in that, that means we're meeting for 3 months. We have 12 meetings, 45 minutes. So just put in the comments freedom, and I will get in touch with you, and we'll tell you more about it. But you can also learn about it on my website, clearintentions.net. And that will be one of the ways that I can support you and encourage you to do this work. So in closing, once again, I want to thank you for showing up. And I really encourage you to take 1 or 2 nuggets from today and implement them, and take a look at, what is it? Where is that unfinished baggage? Where is my mother still sitting in my neck and holding me back? And what can I do about it? But more so, do I want to do something about it? And hopefully the answer is yes to you. So thank you for coming, and have a great day, and take care.